We need to talk about Sally Rooney's Intermezzo. I want to talk to you guys about the novel and about my experience reading it and about, I guess, just the place it occupies in the culture in the moment, which I think is a bit problematic. And here's why. So Intermezzo is Sally Rooney's fourth novel, following Conversations with Friends, Normal People, and Beautiful World, Where Are You? Beautiful World, Where Are You was published in 2021. So it's been 3 years since she's published anything. And of course, I think the announcement of the novel came out in January or thereabouts. And it's been complete madness over the last few months. People obviously have been very anxious to read the novel, as have I. There's always an element of a kind of awkward, I think, marketing storm around Sally Rooney. And I think because social media is a space where people try to simplify things into like mere catchphrases or just tags or just aesthetics, which is a word that is so poorly employed throughout places like TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest. Anyway, I feel that Sally Rooney is more like, I don't know, reduced to an aesthetics oftentimes in these conversations, which is fine. I think people can have fun with whatever they want to have fun with. But I also feel that this kind of expectation and this idea of Sally Rooney's writing as being relatable can be a problem when we are trying to have a conversation about the book itself. And I feel that these simplifications kind of bleed into actual literary criticism or what should be literary criticism. So just fawning over Sally Rooney in many different like media vehicles is a bit, I think, disappointing because I think she's very talented. I think she's great, obviously. But I do feel that some of the interviews and obviously the text around the interviews and some of the things that have been said in reviews, like, oh my God, why wasn't she nominated for the Booker? Which is fine. You can interrogate why a writer or a specific work wasn't nominated if you feel that it should have been. But obviously, if you're saying that someone who was actually nominated shouldn't be there. So, like, have you read all the other novels? Do you really want to have that conversation? Anyway, I feel that a lot of the discourse is a bit empty, a bit shallow. And I personally disliked Intermezzo. It's the first Sally Rooney novel that I actually dislike. So I've read a few of Sally Rooney's short stories and I mostly enjoyed them. I've read her 3 novels. I was obsessed with Normal People for a long time. I wrote about Sally Rooney's novels under like an academic capacity. I published articles about them. So I take her writing very seriously. And I respect her a lot, but I do feel that maybe because people are so excited with the literary event itself, sometimes it's a bit difficult to actually find room to address, I don't know, anything beyond, like, this is a novel about 2 brothers. This is her most mature novel of all, or, you know, these things that keep being repeated again and again to oblivion. So today I saw this post that actually was published like a week ago, exactly a week ago, so the day before the actual publication of Sally Rooney's Intermezzo, that brings a lot of like blurbs about the book, describing it, just rave reviews. And I think this is already kind of a problem because obviously you always have pre-publication reviews coming out, or usually they come out in the day of the publication itself, but sometimes they precede it. But obviously most novels are not being reviewed simultaneously by different media outlets. And certainly bookseller will not like make a little list with all of them. So I kind of feel that because there was already this whole structure of professional literary critics or journalists saying that the novel was flawless, which is such a problematic way of framing it as well. But saying that the novel was flawless and saying basically that it was her most mature novel, or that it was an innovation, that it's completely different from the novels that preceded it. This is something that people kind of absorbed into their pre-reading expectations, and that keeps getting repeated. And I feel that oftentimes the reviews themselves do not kind of defend that argument in any kind of way. It's just there, like, it's a given. It's her most mature novel. What does that mean? So I would like to go through these blurbs, because I feel that a lot of the reviews by the people who also got pre-publication copies, right, advanced copies, were a bit like that as well. Like, you either got a summary of the plot, or you got a summary of the plot, and I don't know, people say it's relatable, it's an innovation, it's she's breaking from the mold that she has explored in novels like Normal People and Conversations with Friends, and like those two are quite different, I feel. But anyway, so this is a post by the bookseller, and it goes like this: rave reviews for Sally Rooney's perfect fourth novel. So I think this is already kind of weird. And this is a problem to me as well, that like a marketing campaign is being confused with literary criticism. It really kind of irks me that you don't know if you're reading actual criticism or if you're just reading, I don't know, a piece that is trying to sell you this book. But anyway, not that Sally Rooney is struggling to sell books, not at all, but I think you get what I mean. So we have a few blurbs in the following page. So the first one is by the Sunday Times, and it says, "The author's most mature and moving book to date." So, of course, literary criticism is always subjective. It has to do with whoever is writing it. It has to do with the critic's own background, the kind of literature they enjoy, the kind of books they have already read, the books that they hold as, I don't know, well-crafted and successful in whatever they set out to do. But I do wonder, ultimately, because this is something that I think probably this Sunday Times piece is the origin of, which is most mature. We hear that so much. This is Sally Rooney's most mature novel, and I saw that in different languages across social media, across platforms. And I do wonder what that means. What is it? And I don't think it's clear at all what people mean when they say that. Is this more mature because the characters are older, or some of the characters are older, right? Peter's 32, Sylvia is about 32 as well, and Margaret is 36. Does that make... I don't feel that the novel's concerns have shifted away from the concerns that are like source of angst for Connell and Marianne, Francis and Bobby. So we still have like interrogations of class dynamics or of power relationships, of like power structures in relationships, romantic or not. We still have an interest in relationships themselves and love. It is true that grief is a major theme here. More maybe so than in other novels, but in Normal People we do have Connell going through a depressive episode, right? He gets really, really depressed after his friend dies by suicide. So, you know, this is not something that she hasn't explored before. So is it more mature because the characters are older? I think I'm a bit skeptical, I guess, of that. I don't see anything that makes this. And then again, the novel has clear aspirations to align itself with a certain literary tradition and critical tradition and theoretical philosophical tradition, but like the other novels are doing that as well. The difference is that maybe you don't have as many direct quotes, you don't have a list at the end, so they're, to me, a bit more organic. But they're still there. I think they're very much still there, and I think they're as politically daring as anything in this. Anyway. And then we have something by The Observer. Perfect, truly wonderful. A tender, funny page turner about the derangements of grief. So, okay, I don't know what a perfect novel is, so I'm not like questioning this because this is subjective, right? I can say something like, to me, I don't know, Normal People is a perfect novel. Or I can say that Pride and Prejudice is, to me, a perfect novel. And there will always be someone who will disagree and that will have, like, clear arguments to, like, try to disprove what my claim. So it is subjective. It's not, like, it's just someone giving their opinion here. But I do find it a bit grating on my nerves, the idea of, like, a tender, funny page turner. I don't feel that this novel is particularly funny. I think that, like, something like Normal People can be funnier at some points. I don't feel that this novel is trying to be funny at all. But anyway, funny. Tender. Yes, I guess. Page turner. I wouldn't call Intermezzo a page turner. Again, this is very subjective. But I feel that a novel, again, her previous novels, and I'm just comparing her own novels, were more, I mean, I struggled through a few passages. I wrote about this on my review. I feel that this novel is longer than it needs to be. It would have benefited, in my perspective, from some editing of passages. It can be repetitive in a way that does not seem intentional at times. There's this very specific compliment that Ivan pays to Margaret. He says that her face is pink and white like a flower, and then Peter thinks the same thing, which I feel that it's a bit of a stretch that they would think the same thing. There are some repetitions throughout that I feel that needn't be there. I understand that maybe you could justify with the whole stream of consciousness thing on Peter's side of the narrative. That doesn't ring that way to me. I feel that this novel should have been a bit shorter. I have nothing against long novels, but I don't feel that Intermezzo needed to be as long as it actually is. But yeah, that's just... Is it about the derangements of grief? Both main characters, I guess Peter and Ivan are the main characters, although we do also have Margaret's perspective. We don't have Sylvia's and Naomi's. We do have her perspective, barely, I think. We don't really get to know Margaret as much as maybe I would have wished. But I don't know if the novel is about that. It is also about grief, I guess, but there's so much going on at the same time that I feel that some of the themes get kind of waylaid. Maybe grief is the one that she pursues most consistently throughout. Anyway. And again, page turner about the derangements of grief. Then we have the Guardian's piece, and I think this was the one that I disliked the most, because that was the one that said that, is there a better writer today than Sally Rooney? And it's like, I don't know, I feel that a person, and I'm not saying that the person who wrote this doesn't, of course they do, because they are reviewing books on The Guardian, but like, I feel that if you read a lot, you don't think about literature in those terms, like, who is the best writer right now? If you read a lot, you know that there are a lot of different writers who are brilliant, each in their own way. And I think that if you would make an argument for Rooney's brilliance, it wouldn't necessarily be with this. I feel that sometimes, or maybe because this novel has a certain posturing, and maybe that's that. It has a certain posturing to be doing something that her previous ones weren't. Maybe Beautiful World, Where Are You? I feel that as a philosophical investigation and analysis, Beautiful World, Where Are You thrives in a way that Intermezzo does not. And I do know that Beautiful World, Where Are You is a bit more controversial. And I took the time to actually take a look at Goodreads as well. And there are people giving it 5 stars and saying, I haven't finished it yet, but I absolutely love it. And I was like, people really want to like it, and that's fine, but at the same time, bit strange. But anyway, the blurb they got from the Guardian article was, Intermezzo is an accomplished continuation of the writing that made Rooney a global phenomenon. And I think this was actually picked. I'm glad they didn't just pick the one where the reviewer says that there's no better writer than Rooney, basically. But I think in a way it is a continuation, but it is also a deviation, in the sense that some of the themes and motifs and situations that she wishes to unpack throughout the plot are too similar to me to some of the things that she has already explored. We do have Peter being worried about being perceived as normal, and he actually says that, normal. And I feel that if you already wrote a novel called Normal People, in which Marianne is oh, I'm not like normal people, and then Connell is so concerned about being normal, and then loving Marianne makes him not normal and different from the others, and this is this source of anguish for the two of them, being normal. What is normal? Who is normal? Anyway, I feel that to have that again in Intermezzo is a bit much, but that's just to my taste. But we do have certain configurations that again replicate some of the things that she has already explored a lot, in a way that doesn't necessarily feel as a continuation, which is the word that is being employed here. I feel that it's just going back to the same thing and maybe trying it on in someone who is 32 instead of 21. But we already had all the characters. So if this is supposed to be more mature because the characters are older and so their problems would be different, we already had that as well, right, in Conversations with Friends. And we already kind of had that as well in Beautiful World. So just going back to the previous one. Then we have this one from Financial Times, a keenly intelligent book about brothers, lovers, relationships, and what it means and what it might mean to lean on others, which I feel that this is fair as a description. Again, I don't feel like this is about the derangements of grief, as the Observer piece argued. I think this might be more, closer actually to what the novel is actually doing. But I do feel it's weird as well to call it a keenly intelligent book. Of course, Sally Rooney is brilliant. She's very intelligent, but what does that mean, a keenly intelligent book? What is an intelligent book? What is a dumb or stupid or obtuse book, Some of the passages really reminded me of a particular strain of what publishers would call maybe commercial fiction. Or I know Sally Rooney has been compared to romance writers quite a lot, and people are always anxious to say that she's not. But I do feel that some of the sex scenes were quite male-gazy in a way that some mainstream romance writers are sometimes guilted with being. The whole thing about Margaret fantasizing about Ivan being deep inside her, and that's basically all that is highlighted throughout until, I'm not sure like some of the sex scenes here, and I thought that was a bit strange because Sally Rooney is usually very, I think, skilled at writing sex scenes, and for me, of course, this is all for me, it didn't really work much this time. But anyway, and then we have the final one, which is by the bookseller, right? It's an article published on the bookseller itself. A lyrical story of fraternal friction, emotional crises, and unexpected love. So there are 3 things here, right? Or actually 4. So let's unexpected love. Yes, for like Margaret and Ivan, I guess it's unexpected love. I have a problem with like Margaret and Ivan that kind of stems from the fact that Ivan is revealed throughout the plot to have been an incel. His brother calls him an incel and describes a lot of things. There are like things that incels do and think about women. Ivan himself kind of confesses that he used to watch certain videos online and to have a certain view of women that, I don't know, changes when he meets Margaret and falls in love with her. I'm not quite sure when that changes. But I do feel that this is a problem if you're gonna have a character who is an incel. Of course, it's surprising, right, to have an incel falling in love with a 36-year-old woman when you see the kind of horrible things that incels write about women online. I guess the age gap might be surprising here, or that Margaret, well, she's certainly surprised about falling in love with him, whom she calls boy a lot of times throughout. She's going through this separation. She isn't divorced yet. So I guess it is unexpected. Not, well, the Peter stuff, not really. But I guess this is about Ivan. But I do feel that if you're going to have a character who is an incel, you need to like unpack that a bit more. Because, I mean, I think this is one of the great problems of our age, that so many young men are being co-opted and radicalized into these horrible, horrible views about women, about feminism and whatnot. And many, like, I don't know, liberal or left-wing ideas about society and the world. And how exactly does one go back from that towards being more reasonable? This is not something that we see. I mean, Ivan is already like very normal, and even when Peter, I guess that would have been like an opportunity to unpack that a little bit. Even when Peter says, "Look, you're actually a bit deranged as well. I'll admit that I was wrong with you at one point there, but like you're also saying these horrible things about women." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know. Even if I said that, it doesn't matter because I don't think that anymore." So we don't really see the character evolve at all when you stop to think about it. Like, Ivan doesn't really change much. The only thing that changes is that he, like, I don't know, makes up with Peter. Anyway, yeah. So unexpected love, I guess it is. But the other thing I wanted to address was, like, emotional crises. Yes. Ultimately, this is a lot about Peter being always on the edge of an emotional and mental breakdown, which he does have at one point because he's trying to cope with, like, losing his dad. And he also hasn't really processed not being able to be with Sylvia in the way that he did. And I feel that Sylvia is such a grossly underdeveloped character. Both Sylvia and Naomi, I feel that they only exist in relation to Peter as human beings. Like, Naomi's friends kind of disappear. She's never really worried about them. Everybody loses their home, and then she goes to live with Peter. And sometimes she's going out with her friends. We never know what actually what happened there. And this is another thing. Like, Rooney is quite interested in, like, critiquing the housing crisis in Dublin, in Ireland, which I think is great. But, like, it doesn't really go anywhere much. I mean, we have Naomi being forcefully and violently evicted. We have Peter complaining about that with his friends. And then, I mean, that just gets diluted into, like, the romantic plot, which I guess it's okay. But, like, yeah, there are a lot of things going on in this novel. And then the final thing is like lyrical story of fraternal friction, which, yeah, I guess the main thing here would be like Peter and Ivan. We kind of alternate between the two of them, although sometimes we do see things from Margaret's perspective. It is really about Peter and Ivan, these two brothers, going through this bereavement, processing the fact that they lost their dad, and Peter has a lot of baggage there with his father, and Ivan doesn't really see things from Peter's perspective. He feels that he was slighted in some ways. So we do see that. I feel that this is like a fair description of the novel, and I agree with that. But again, a lyrical representation, I think that, and this is like a problem, I guess, that the words poetic and lyrical get thrown around a bit aimlessly. Like, I get that this has to do with the way that Rooney kind of explores language and form in this novel, but she also did that in like Beautiful World, Where Are You? She does that a bit more here, and people have compared that her exploration of it with like Ulysses, with Joyce, which is clearly intentional on her part, which fine. But I just feel that that's, I don't know, one of those words that people use when they want to say that like language is viewed in a beautiful way, but we do have some like direct quotes from like Keats, from Shakespeare, from Hamlet, which I guess would sound lyrical, perhaps. And I don't know if that's the thing like that defines the struggle between the brothers, because it's like this lyrical exploration of friction between brothers. I'm not attacking these reviewers at all. I feel that they have a right to their opinion, but I do think that we live in a culture where like online discourse, and especially after, I mean, this was already the case before, but especially after the Normal People adaptation, Sally Rooney kind of became this, I don't know, icon, this totem of like a certain aesthetic, which is not always related to her writing. And then we go into this whole other discussion around the commodification of literature, and Sally Rooney herself says that she feels bad when she senses that somehow herself, or I don't know, her public persona, which is almost non-existent, but the idea that people have of her and of her writing contribute to something kind of horrible in the ways that people think about books, and like the book becoming a commodity, which certainly happened again throughout like this kind of marketing campaign for Intermezzo, people like posting their proofs. And you can't, I maybe I'm wrong, but like I read a lot of people reviewing in different countries like their advanced reader copies, and I didn't see one single review where the person didn't like the book, which seems a bit unlikely because there were like Rooney superfans receiving it, which like they would probably enjoy it, although I didn't, but they were more likely to enjoy it. But like there were a lot of people who hadn't even read anything by Sally Rooney before. So I don't think it's possible for a book to be universally liked, regardless of how brilliant. So I feel that, and this is something that was addressed in a piece on Squire, which also has its problems, but I think that that was interesting, like the ethics behind like receiving a book, being gifted a book ahead of publication, and something as buzzy as Intermezzo, and still like being able to critique it. Because there's also the fact that these initial reviews by literary critics or journalists or by social media people will certainly influence the way that the book will be perceived later on by people who like already read from people that they trust that the book is perfect, which is such a weird word. Of course, people are entitled to their opinions. I just feel that there's something quite pernicious behind the whole thing. I don't feel that people need to agree or dislike this novel. I feel that there is a lot to like, to me, especially like the eco-critical element, and I'm actually writing about that. And I think that's fine. but I did feel that there are some problems, and I felt that I needed or wanted to address them in my channel. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Did you enjoy Intermezzo? Do you agree with that idea of it being more mature than Rooney's other novels? And if you do agree, please tell me, what do you feel that that means exactly? Yeah. So thank you for watching. If you are interested in staying in conversation with me, consider subscribing, and let's keep in touch. See you next time.